In the year 2020, border lockdowns made me a digital nomad by accident. That same year, my family turned their back on me because of my sexuality. I'm La-Vonne, a Jamaican living in Tulum, Mexico. This is my adventure in authenticity.
My guest today is Josue. Josue is a retired entrepreneur who retired at 31. I've met Josue here in Mexico at a writers club. So he's also a writer, climate activist, and I would say a bit of a nomad or traveler. Josue, it's so nice to have you on my podcast. Thank you for being here.
Of course. As always, I am charmed to get the opportunity to speak with you, Charisse. Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's start off with the very impressive fact of being retired, a retired entrepreneur at 31. How is that possible? How did you, how did you do it?
Yeah, I think it's a surprisingly cut and dry story for my end. It just required a tremendous amount of luck, and then I had to do my own share of hard work as well. But let's see, I graduated from UBC in British Columbia, Canada. I had student debt. I grew up poor, so the money didn't come naturally from my family. But I went to Korea to teach competitive debate and speech because that was a big passion and interest of mine in university. And I stayed there long enough that I was able to pay off my student debt and then save up $30,000, which in my mind was more than enough to open a retail store. In reality, that was blindingly optimistic, left me no room for a runway, and was delusional. Yet, I did manage to scrape by. I opened my store in Newton, Surrey. I picked an industry that didn't really resonate with my character, but I had run the numbers. I evaluated the thing critically. I had some experience in it, and then I knew it would take off. And so I actually opened a vape shop back in 2015, when I was 25 years old, or was about to turn 25 years old. And then it was successful. The right currents. I had, pretty good head on my shoulders. I didn't make any dramatic mistakes, but just worked hard every day. Eventually, I was able to get employees. Eventually, I was able to get a second store. And then after 7 years of that, I was done. I was very, very done with all of it. And so I just packed it up, closed the stores, done. And then, it was 31.
First of all, congratulations on that focused mindset. I'm curious, though, about what your spending habits would have been during that time, because 7 years of business to be in and out and then be living a relatively chill life, retired now, as you say, what sort of habits did you develop that probably contributed to you being able to make that decision to retire?
That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, that was probably my one quirk, one personality trait that was indisposable. It was absolutely critical. Because I made okay money in Korea, but I made sure while I was paying off my student debt that every penny went towards that. I sacrificed beyond levels of rationality. There was no balance in my life. I just did not like being in student debt. And that anxiety of the debt was it outweighed hunger. It outweighed my desire to go on dates or to eat good food. It certainly outweighed, other things like excursions and, wearing nice clothes. So it was just a personal passion that allowed me to prioritize effectively financially. And then, I decided that I wanted to run my own business. By the time I had paid off my student debts. And so I basically kept the same lifestyle, but now the money was, positive towards saving for a small business. And then once you're in the business, well, by gosh, you don't have a choice. You think in finances every day, no matter what, which was fine for me because that was my nature. And so, the secret to retiring at that point in time was simply not to not to get excited or arrogant about income. You know, the money, I had always desired the money to be there for my family, future kids, things like that, for a positive future. It was never there to spend frivolously in the moment just because I was making good money. So I think at the height of it, and I did brag about this because I did take a lot of pride in my finances. I certainly didn't take pride in the way I dressed or the silly car that I drove or whatever. But I took tremendous pride in saving 95% of my income.
Wow.
So the really good months, I would spend I wasn't going hungry at that point. Like, you know what I mean? Like at that point I was making sure I was healthy, mentally and physically as much as the business allowed. So I would still spend like $3,500 to $4,000 a month, which is not an insignificant amount, at least in Canada, for what I was able to do. But that amounted to about 5% of what I was making per month. So, and then you do that for a while, and then you have enough money. It's the end of it.
That is impressive, and that shows a certain level of single-mindedness that I certainly don't relate to when it comes to how I handle my finances. I'm curious now, as a traveler, so you've been to Korea. I know at least that you've been to Mexico, and I want to talk more about where else you've traveled and what your travels have been like. But before we go there, I want to know a little bit more about how you apply personal finance rules or principles to travel and to your travel experience.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's super helpful for most people who are passionate about travel, who aspire to travel a lot. Because the reality of it is psychologically tricky, because most of the really beautiful places, Tulum is a great example. I love Tulum. Tulum is amazing for so many reasons. But Tulum is very much curated for a tourist, not a nomad. Psychologically, a massive difference. Like a tourist is there to let off steam, to build some good moments, and to recharge so they can get back to their 9 to 5. Financially, everything there is driven on impulse in Tulum. It's a city founded on impulse and pleasure seeking and the short-term gains. From the groceries to the restaurants to the excursions, all of those are absolutely designed for people who are not there to spend money steadily and responsibly. They're there for someone who's on vacation. And if you're a nomad, you're not on vacation. That's just your life. And if you have
I am not on vacation. This is my life.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have to have a responsible financial backbone, which is really difficult when you're in these paradises that very much cater to a more hedonistic approach and a more whimsical approach to finances. So that is tricky, and you have to be exceptionally disciplined if it is your lifestyle, right? If you think being a nomad and traveling a lot is synonymous with the kind of pleasure and the mentality you have when you've been on vacation, you're just in for an eye-opener. So that's just not the case.
Yeah, I feel that. When you've traveled either to Tulum or Korea or elsewhere, are there any particular tips or tricks that you use when it comes to budgeting for transportation, for food, etc., that you think could be helpful for anybody listening?
Yeah, I mean, if I really enjoy traveling. So like even when I go on vacation, the benefit of not being tied down to a 9 to 5 is that you can go somewhere for a longer stretch of time. You don't have to pack everything to like 4 days, right? And so one benefit of that is that you don't feel so bad, and you shouldn't feel so bad when you just have relaxed days. When you have days, well, you're not supposed to build this once in a lifetime memory going up a pyramid or at the top of the Eiffel Tower or eat this exquisite meal. And so you need to find pleasure and wonderment in very mundane things. And for me, that's easy. Like if you go to a foreign country and you go to like a little bodega or just a supermarket, even if it's like the most generic feeling supermarket that you get anywhere back home, there's amazing things in there. There's a whole day excursion and just looking at the different products. And so finding fulfillment as a nomad in a new environment, in that kind of a way, being mindful that like you shouldn't have to spend any money to be in love with the place you're in. I think that's key. But obviously, a lot of things are going to compel against that. Specifically, the countries themselves that obviously their economies run on your dollars, but also your influences back home. Most people who are nomadic, all their social networks and relationships are with people that aren't. And so you're going to have this pressure from these people to think the way that they do, which is, most usually they're quite antithetical to the kind of alternate lifestyle that a nomad has to embrace, both financially as well as just spiritually and socially, right? So that is quite challenging. You kind of are compelled to constantly buck the trends and be a bit of a contrarian on kind of a regular basis. That's the nature of it. But you find community, and that helps.
That's very interesting what you said about, at least on a financial level, trying to live a nomadic life, but having friends, family who aren't, and therefore being influenced by what their financial expectations may be of life. That, to me, I hear you, and I heard that you also said it's on an emotional level as well, spiritual. That, to me, is a really big point. And it's a big point when it comes to this idea of authenticity, which is what this whole podcast is founded on. The idea of what does it even mean to be authentic. But basically in traveling, where you get to confront mindsets that simply don't fit because of your specific and unique way of being. That could be your unique way of being because you're a traveler. But even someone who's not a traveler, there could be very unique ways of being that are your own, that the people around you don't necessarily hold. And there has to be a certain level of awareness and wisdom as to what's my thing? How am I designing my life? But as you say, it's a tricky thing to be a contrarian.
I completely agree. And yeah, just touching on that point, the theme of authenticity, I think that is, it requires a disciplined spirit, right? Because I think the nature and the draw of nomadicism, of just living freely in an alternate lifestyle, traveling extensively, being unburdened by conventional expectations and standards, from most countries. I think all of that requires just a tremendous amount of fortitude, because every element of that conventional lifestyle, the people in it, the economy in it, the political structures in it, everything will always compel you to join and conform. And it needs to, right, to self-sustain. And so you need to be really profoundly linked to your own guidance, your own principles. And I would say, most importantly, your own priorities. Priority isn't just things that you like. They're not your values. Priorities is you understanding the hierarchy of the things that matter to you, knowing what's number one, knowing what's number two, and knowing what's number three. And on a daily basis, understanding that I am willing to sacrifice thing number 5 in order so I can preserve thing number 3. And if you don't have those priorities in order, consistent and disciplined, and just sure-footed in your own guiding lights, then society will, at every single moment, just blind you with the value or the interest or the impulse of the moment, right? So you got to have your priorities in order.
That's an excellent point. And actually, after this call, I'm going to go do my homework and rewrite my priorities. You just sharing that right now, I realize that I could do some of that. Like, I'm at a place where I don't have a lot of clarity on a lot of things, and I could do a revision of what are my priorities. And I love what you said of being willing to sacrifice thing number 5 for thing number 3. I think that's
key. And I think so much of society will ridicule you for having any semblance of priorities. I think society lies to you by telling you you can have everything all at once so long as you follow these rules. And of course, that's a lie. It is a malicious lie. If you look at most people in society, even extremely wealthy developed countries such as Canada, where I come from, the conventional way of living is a trap that is desperately in need of reform. yeah, the capitalist machinery absolutely tells you, you can have everything. And so, by the way, here's the thing that I would like for you to want at this moment. And then, in 2 hours, here's another thing I think you deserve and you would like in this moment. And if you don't have the ability to have priorities, you don't know when to say no. And if you don't know when to say no and you say yes to everything, well, you've got nothing. You're just you're a leaf in the wind. And then, it's going to be very difficult to stay authentic.
But who codes those priorities? You say it could be difficult to stay authentic because you don't have priorities. And also you could be very inauthentic because the priorities that you have are coded by something outside of you, are programmed by some other interest.
Oh, completely agree. And, I think authenticity is tricky when we're talking about, because I've been reflecting on this a lot in anticipation of your podcast, because I think it's a wonderful theme, cornerstone for it. I've been reflecting on the nature of authenticity. Like, fundamentally, it obviously means to be true, to be sincere, to not be counterfeit, right? So it's a value judgment on sincerity, fundamentally. But, I mean, we also use it to reflect the true nature of a human. But these are different things. And that's that there's some tension there, because the true nature of the human depends on the human. And we, without thought, assume that every human being at their core is fundamentally sincere. And then that sounds like a nice thing. That's almost like saying all people are good, but that's not the case. Sincerity is a very specific virtue. And there are many instances where I don't care if someone is sincere, or they have another quality that is a greater priority to them, to sincerity. So obviously I don't like deceptive people. That's the counter opposite of sincerity. But what about a playful trickster who uses half lies to have some fun? Who doesn't love a trickster god? But what about someone who is deeply diplomatic? Sometimes you have to hide sincerity to be strategic for the sake of diplomacy. And sometimes it is more important to be diplomatic. That's just the nature of life. Some contexts say diplomacy is more urgent than sincerity. Or compassion. Sometimes sincerity is not compassionate. Sometimes I would prefer, in certain instances, people to be far more compassionate than they are sincere. And so all of these things could be the true nature of a person, yet they can be insincere, or to some degree less sincere. And if they're insincere, then that means they are authentically insincere. And so we get a bit of a paradox, don't we?
We do get a paradox. And I love that you brought it here. And I'm smiling because I love having conversations with you, because we go down. This is the kind of conversations you have with a debate coach. Love it. Because I also have been thinking this similarly. This podcast, I told you, is a work in progress. And I had a conversation with a friend yesterday about whether or not I want to include cursing in the podcast. Naturally, I curse in conversation with people that I feel most sincere with, being able to express myself most sincerely. Cursing rolls off my tongue quite easily. However, I also think about, okay, so that's an authentic representation of how I may speak, depending on who I'm speaking to. Because like you said, diplomacy matters, and diplomacy affects how sincere you may be. So I may be speaking to a certain person. I'm not going to be cursing if I'm talking to my grandma. That's just not necessary, right?
Right, of course,
And so I had to now realize, okay, what I need to do, priorities, is get very clear on who is this podcast for? Is it just for me to express myself, or is it for me to hope that a certain message reaches a certain people? Maybe some of those people cannot bear to hear me cursing, and my cursing will turn them off from the message. Does that make me inauthentic? And I got in the same paradox question as well. But then in that moment, I started feeling happy about how I'm a poet and I'm good at wordplay, because the name of the podcast is Adventure in Authenticity, which could mean the adventure of being authentic. However, if you just listen to the sound, it could also be adventure in authenticity. So it could be the adventure of being inauthentic, both in one. And I think truly in life,
I love that. That's fantastic.
I think it's even a play on myself to think that I can have a show that truly gets to the core of what it means to be authentic. I agree with you. There is a paradox. I don't know if we ever can truly be, because we're so relative to each other. Everything is relative. Yeah. And the relativeness means that how Sharice is when she talks to her Jamaican people, when I'm talking to my Jamaican people, is different. Cuando estoy hablando con mis personas mexicanas, it's different when I'm talking to you. It's different. It's relative. What's the authentic thing? Maybe flexibility. Maybe that's it. Maybe authenticity comes down to responsiveness and being, not necessarily having a pre-coded response, but being willing to have a flexibility in your responsiveness as life goes on.
Yeah, I love that. That's true. I think another element of that, as far as the decision of cursing versus not, because this is a business lesson as well, is there's always going to be a trade-off, and each time you look at the trade-off, you have to understand it, and once you understand it, it should be clear, which direction you want to go and where the biggest returns are. The trade-off is straightforward. You cast a wide net to catch as many people that could presumably be interested in the product, or you pivot, intentionally isolate some people so that you can have a more fanatical, more radically intimate relationship with your core audience, right? Because you're going to have more people that are more receptive to your authenticity if you're cursing, or you mention the fandoms you're in, you mentioned the skin product you like. You could go hard, right? You could be Sharice, the person with this religion, with this height, who lives in this town, and it's just about you're focusing on too narrow of a reach, but you would have a diehard following, right? It's the same in sales. It's the same with products and how you manufacture them and how you market them. Sometimes there are more financial payouts, more profits to be made when you specify the product, when you make it feel really resonant with a specific audience. So that's sometimes the better trade-off. But I mean, podcast, I don't know anything about podcasts, so who's to say? But you might want to get some analytics on that as far as successful endeavors.
Well, thank you for that quick business lesson. Thinking about it from that idea. Again, it's a work in progress, as everything is in my life. Some thoughts I have about it are, on the one hand, I know how to cater to everyone. That's been a skill of mine. Since the day I was born. My mother has always said I was a very compliant child. When I came out as pansexual to her in 2020, and she was very shocked at my seemingly rebelliousness, her repeated thing was, but you were such a compliant child. So as I'm starting to step into my authentic presence as an adult, I'm no longer going to church. I'm communing with nature in a way that they think is witchcraft, whatever it is.
Right, of course.
That's the thing she repeats. You were such a compliant child. I know how to be a chameleon. I've been a television host. I've hosted events. I'm a good friend. I'm a great listener. I know how to do that. And then I also think, how do I connect with not just a person who will buy my product? Because I could probably sell any product. But if I'm thinking about trying to live my life in a way that feels coherent, I would like to feel like my work feels aligned with my being as much as possible. So how can I, in whatever I'm doing, have a thread of me so that whoever is activated by it is more or less aligned with me personally? And I don't know if that's just a selfish sort of looking for self-expression in a space that I shouldn't, but I do feel like I want to experiment with the idea of a life that's unified, because I've lived a fragmented life. I've lived a double life. I've lived a I'm this to this person and that to that person. And I kind of just want to unify all parts of that and it come as an integrated whole. Even if I express myself in different ways at different times,
of course,
there's enough connection with you that when I talk in patois, you still, you're not going to be thrown off or like, okay, that's just Cherise.
You have to remember, I'm also exceptionally smart. So, I'm able to tune in even if I don't understand.
But you are.
I know I'm thinking about the situation, and let's bring this, plurality of Cherise back to something we talked at the start with. And if you are gaining so many different things by being so many different people, so many different Cherises, maybe it goes back to the question of priorities, right? Getting a sense of who is the most important Cherise to you. But more importantly, and this is something that people can't do, right? I'm not suggesting in a podcast that it's a problem when people can't do this, because sincerely, I think one of the things that has been a gift to me is my ability to prioritize, and that means willfully sacrificing, and that is so difficult. Most people cannot say I am giving up priority number 5. It's a nice thing. That's the thing about priorities, is everything on the list is a good thing. It's all good. And you're always going to have some people in your life that say, you cannot let go of this. How dare you let go of this? Don't you understand how critical this is to you? Every item is going to have those people. And to have the fortitude to say, I respectfully disagree. I'm sorry. I'm not going to live my life that way. I have to let this go so I can have this other thing that is more important to me. That is a profound superpower that I think very few people have. But I think that is an interesting question or a lens to ask yourself as far as the plurality of Cherise. Who is the priority? Which Cherise makes you feel most alive in? Make a spreadsheet.
Question. I do love making spreadsheets. I make a spreadsheet to choose apartments. I make a decision matrix with like a weighted decision matrix in Google Sheets when I'm going to look at apartments. I love making spreadsheets.
I love that. That's fantastic.
I love it.
Amazing.
I want to ask you this because I feel like I've been talking about myself too much, and I wanted to ask you from before.
Not at all.
You talk about priorities. I'm curious about, if you want to share, what your personal priorities are, top 5 in your life.
Geez, I don't know if I have a top 5, to be honest. I mean, I have a daughter. She's 2 years old. She's the number one priority. I've made some massive moves in my life the past couple of months to demonstrate that. I lost a car in the process. I'm in the freezing cold Calgary climate, away from my beautiful Tulum home in the process. But that's all okay. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Even with calamity strikes like my car, which is only a 2018, had just bizarre internal problems. Probably my fault, to be fair. But even when that happens, I look back and I'm like, well, I made all these things happen because I was pursuing my number one priority, which is spending time with my daughter. It's not, it's very easy for me to shrug it off. Like, how much time do I need to sit on this painful hypothetical of decisions that I've made leading up to this? Not long. It was pretty straightforward. I did everything I could to prioritize spending time with my daughter. I feel proud about that. Even if bad things happen, it's okay. But that's number 1, spending time with my daughter. I guess number 2 is, interestingly enough, my physical and mental health. And priorities change, by the way. So I wouldn't say that this list has been consistent for that. Well, I mean, my daughter's only 2 years old, so obviously I had a different priority before she was born. But yeah, priorities change. But anyways, right now in my life, the second priority is just making sure I'm on top of my health, mental and physical. And I'm doing a pretty good job with that. I'm pretty proud of myself for that. Third is...
Didn't you walk like 1 hour to meet me once?
Well, I mean,
or was it 2 hours?
That's a pretty exceptional situation. You're a very pretty girl, so I don't think that's representative of how fit I am. No, I do walk a good amount. It's not that irregular for me to walk a couple hours at a time. But I'm in good shape right now, and that's I mentioned that because that was definitely not the case for the majority of my life, and that was a thing. That was one of those lower tier priorities that was difficult for me to stomach when I was in my grind phase, when I was in Korea starving eating probably 800 calories a day some days, truly malnourished just because I was cheap. It was very difficult to justify that. It was very difficult to justify that because I knew the risk of that being that if I get into these very bad habits for my physical health, it's improbable that I will reprioritize that later in life. And I'm very happy and I'm proud of myself that I'm in great shape right now. And then I'm glad that gamble worked out because I had always told myself that right now I need to sacrifice for these because then it'll give me windows and opportunities to worry about my health later on. And that paid dividends. That made sense. And so I'm in good health now. And it is a priority, and I'm happy to make it a top priority for myself. And it's also a top priority because it has a cascading effect on my other priorities.
Yes.
The lower priorities all benefit from me being in a great place, emotionally, mentally, and creatively, and all of that comes from my physical regimen, my routine, my working out.
Yes.
Other priorities are my writing career, which is a slow burn thing, but I'm happy with it. And just pursuing, redirecting my life in big picture ways is something that I'm prioritizing right now. It's getting a deeper sense of where I want to be and what I want to do. That's another priority as well, which again benefits from being in a good mental and emotional place. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually do feel like emotional, mental, physical health, top priority for me. Definitely. It's not something I'm willing to sacrifice for anything. And that's put me in places where no money, no food,
Right.
which is interesting. And I just decided I'm fasting on that day. I was having a conversation with a friend. I was like, okay, when there's no food, it just means it's a fast day. So it's a spiritual healthy day. Here's the thing. The intention you put on things makes a difference. I am telling you, it really, really does. It really does. I'm curious. You talk about Korea and being malnourished because you were just so focused on spending money there, on saving money there.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your Korea trip? What was that about? How did you actually end up in Korea?
In Korea, well, that's pretty straightforward. So in university, I got involved in competitive debate and speech. I competed myself, but I also just really liked coaching it. And I coached enough and volunteered that I got a part-time job. And then by the time I graduated, just my reputation within that job gave me a very cushy job. In Korea, I actually had known the instructor at this academy in Korea that specialized in debate. I'd known the instructor because she had come from my academy that I coached at, and we got along. And she recommended me to the position. And then shortly after she left for another position, interestingly enough, that academy was not a great fit for her because it was so competitive and geared towards results. And I thrived in that environment. I was a good fit for that academy. So I became the head debate instructor after just a short while. And then the pay was very good. The pay was pretty good, honestly. And I utilized that to save as much as I could. I was there for a bit over a year. Yeah, in a bit over a year, I was able to pay off those debts and make the 30K. Yeah. I think it was exactly a year and 3 months. Yes. I know it was a year and 3 months because I flew to Korea on the gamble that I told my director who sponsored my visa. I said I only wanted to commit for 3 months. It's like, I'm willing to commit and sign a contract for 3 months. And that I told them, pay me very little, fly me over there, cover my costs. I will convince you of my value once I'm there. And then we will negotiate while I'm there. And when I got there, I made a lot of friends with a lot of other directors at other academies and flaunted my resume. And so when the 3 months were up, I had some negotiating power. I'm like, I want this much money or I will leave. And I was already the head debate instructor at that time. So I kind of had them in a vice. And so they gave me the money that I want. Well, not quite the money that I want.
You are playing chess where other people are playing checkers.
I try to. It is a gambit and it is very risky. Sometimes it does not pay off, I assure you. But that one paid off and that was good. So that's how that happened. I love teaching. I love teaching. It was really good. But, it's still a job. Everything is still a job. Every passion, if you need it for money, it's still a grind. It still requires sacrifice. So at that point in time, about halfway through, I realized I love this, but I want to run my own business. And it didn't take me long to realize that running a debate academy was impossible in Korea as a foreigner, basically, and it was
Right.
very unprofitable back home in Canada. And so I adjusted my direction in life after that point. But it was very good, and I love Korea. Still my favorite country. Well, I can't say that. I mean, I'm a Mexican nationalist. Mexico is my favorite country on the record, but I love Korea. Korea is fantastic.
What about Korea do you think really grabbed your heart?
Just the people. I mean, Koreans are like no one else. And I've traveled a lot. I've been to a lot of countries now. I think last I counted, it was like 17 countries or something.
Can you list them? I'm curious.
It'll take too long, but I mean, Japan, Thailand, Korea, Philippines, Australia, where else there? And then Slovenia, Italy, France, Spain, most of Central America. I've never been to South America, actually, and I've never been to Africa, which is a darn shame. But, yeah, and so it's 15 when you add up the Central American countries.
I've been to about the same. I've been to about 15, but more on this side of the world. Never been to Africa, never been to South America either. Mostly the Caribbean and Central America and North America I've been to as well.
Yeah, Asia in general is great, but I love Korea. Really recommend it. Slightly cheaper than Japan, and for me personally, I prefer it. It's a great place full of wonderful people.
If you wanted to give the listeners a travel recommendation of somewhere in Korea to visit, or anywhere else in the world that you really particularly like, where would it be and why?
I can think of some places it's been a few years now, so it's actually a bit hazy. I would butcher the pronunciation anyways, but there are just a couple of incredible broad neighborhoods in Korea that I think just walking through, you'll find so many treasures. And again, I'm not gonna insult the people by trying to guess and butcher them. But
I can respect that.
Yeah, and then in Guatemala, actually, of all places, they have the most mythic lake ever. It is high up in the mountains. It's just a little pocket of a lake, Lake Atitlan. And to get someone to take you on one of their little boats costs like, I don't know, $5 or something. They run these boats all the time. It's very common. But if you can catch a boat in the fog when the temperature is just right and you're on this lake and you're surrounded in this fog, it is transcendent. I've never been anywhere where I'm like, I am amongst the gods now. I am no longer on Earth. You feel it internally. The visuals render a spiritual and emotional reaction. That stays with me. So, recommendation.
Can you say the name again?
Lake Atitlan. Yeah, that's right. Love it.
I feel like I've seen that name somewhere.
Sure.
You talk about places that render you sort of speechless, almost like, I think you said it conjures a god. That reminds me of here in Mexico, I traveled to Cuatro Palos in Amealco, Querétaro. So it's the Sierra Gorda, I think, in Querétaro, which is foresty, mountainous areas. And there's a particular area called Cuatro Palos that is basically a ridge from which you can watch the sunrise over a mountain range. And there's fog flowing through the mountain range. And I remember the first time it happened, I went there. I've been there maybe 2 or 3 times. I was sitting there. I remember it was February 5th, 2021, which was exactly 1 year since I had left Jamaica a year before.
Wow.
Not knowing that I wouldn't return. So I'd left Jamaica February 5th, 2020, not knowing I was not going back because the pandemic came and just changed up my plans. And so I'm sitting there after a very chaotic but extremely magical year and watching the sunrise. And I mean, tears just started pouring out of my eyes, just like pouring. It had that effect. So I can imagine Lake Atitlan, something like that when you talk about it, just where it moves you beyond words.
Yeah. And I think as a part of nomadic living is, really valuing those moments and willing to sacrifice to get them. whether that means, hiking, starting at 3 a.m. for 8 hours straight to just catch this perfect moment, or just redesigning your entire life so that you're in positions where you can get more of those moments. I think that's a big part of it. And again, it's about priority. It's about prioritizing those sacred moments. I get it. Love that.
Excellent. This feels like a beautiful place to bring a close to our conversation. Before we go, any last thoughts that you want to share regarding either personal finance or travel, or just your ways of prioritizing as a human, or anything else?
I think that's too broad for my brain to process. I can't think of anything specifically. Maybe I hate pleasantries. I think the details matter for most things in life. All pieces of advice should be taken with a grain of salt. Specialize everything, make it unique to you. But I will say, on the case of priorities, think about what you're willing to sacrifice at all times and for what. But also evaluate your own joy critically. Don't just think that liking X is the same as liking Y. You like them, so they're evaluate your own joy critically through different lenses, in different ways, from different perspectives, so that you are able to differentiate between the different types of joys that you might have lumped together. But again, so you're able to prioritize them, maximize the joys that truly make you alive over the joys that, you didn't think that hard about, that are good, but you don't need them that often.
Yes, so basically make a spreadsheet of your joys.
Yes, that is my advice to everyone. Make a spreadsheet for everything. I love spreadsheets. I would absolutely.
I really do too. I do as well. I'm not even gonna lie.
I hope Microsoft Excel hears this, because I am so down for a sponsorship. I would love to be a cheerleader for Microsoft Excel for my life. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, spreadsheets help to create order to chaos. And I think just, when we live in a world that is innately chaotic, it's helpful to imagine that there is some semblance of control, which may or may not be true, but it's helpful to imagine so. Okay.
Yeah. Well said.
Thank you. Well, toodaloo.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, Charisse. Always lovely to talk to you.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share today's episode with a friend. I hope the show inspires you to live today a little bit more free.